When Tammy's part got expanded, the movie was made longer. The time between them became shorter. But anyway, we always felt that the marriage to Vincent Minnelli was the start of her quote-unquote adult life. And it seemed to be
She'd already been married to David Rose.
Yeah, but we don't show that in the movie.
Right, but we say it.
Yeah, so, but for dramatic purposes, we decided to do it here because it was the marriage to Vincent Minnelli, as I say, that really initiated her as far as her adult life is concerned in the movie. Now, what I think is really interesting here, and what I'd really like to talk about, is we really wanted the color here to pop and really make it all seem like those old Technicolor movies. So what we did is we painted the set all very neutral colors. And Donna, you dressed everybody how? In like grays and browns and totally neutral colors, so that all of this would pop. And James, what did you do?
Well, again, continuing with our special film stock, and you saw some of the lights being turned on. Actually, you see them there, and our shooting crew who are standing in. I wanted to shoot this and show the excitement of how these films were made. So some of the shots are an exact quote, like here, from the original film. But the crane shot, of course, doesn't exist in the original, but we wanted to pull back and really show just how complicated a film was.
Yeah, and it was also the idea that we would never, in any of the reproductions, make it look like we were actually showing you a clip from the film. So we always found ways to pull back and make it look like
it was another
only a take. It's only a take.
It's a piece.
It's a piece. And it's not necessarily the piece you actually saw when you saw the movie.
Because that would be so dangerous. And I think that was such a brilliant,
Well, we never wanted it to look like, oh, you're supposed to be seeing what you've always been seeing when you watch Meet Me in St. Louis. No, this is the making of Meet Me in St. Louis, and this is one take which may not have been the real take. Donna, your job here was unbelievable. How did you do this?
Research. And then
but how did these people wind up looking like the people on the trolley in Meet Me in St. Louis?
We really want, loop for loop, button for button, bow for bow, and as close to the color, which we had, and then we enhanced it just a bit up. I mean, James, we did some tests on color, and James was there advising me how things were going to look. And even Judy's jacket, we had greener, and then we were doing this in front of a green screen. And after we tested it, we had to re-dye the jacket and repaint it to get it even darker, because it was originally a black jacket, and we didn't want it to matte out. We wanted it to have some luster to it, and to also have, this Technicolor feeling to it.
So in the actual film, is it a black jacket?
It's black.
So we made it green.
We made it a dark green with a black dye coat over it, so it would have a certain pop and a luster from underneath. Because
it was being shot in front of a green screen?
Yes.
So in those days, James, how would they have done that?
They were actually doing rear projection, which you saw the countdown leader, where they projected the image behind. And our stage wasn't large enough. We didn't have an MGM stage, so we cheated it with the green screen. But we had to go out and shoot a background for the trolley and all that.
Right.
Did you ever feel intimidated that you were having to recreate all of those incredible classic MGM movies, James?
Well, at first I thought, Judy Davis is sort of crazy and very brave to be taking on Judy Garland. And then I suddenly realized, I'm going to take on Wizard of Oz and St. Louis. So, I had to get it right, because everyone knows what these films look like. And if I got it wrong, I wouldn't be able to show my face.
That's a bit of a challenge.
It was difficult.
And Judy Garland, at this moment in her life, when she met Vincent Minnelli, the meeting, the thing that made it so potent and so strong is that she felt that he was the first director who ever made her look beautiful.
And if you watched Meet Me in St. Louis, he truly did.
That he made her really look like a woman, and that he really made her look beautiful.
Right.
And they were already engaged in a love affair while they were making this movie.
Right.
They had already become lovers.
Yeah, and again, she confided in Roger, and everybody on the set sort of, knew that they had a relationship going. And they loved each other. And it was a perfect match, as we say in the movie, for the studio.
Yeah, the studio really encouraged it because he was an up-and-coming director and she was a problematic, quote-unquote, actress because they were, having lots of problems with her temperamentally, and they knew that she was sort of getting hooked on these drugs. And they really saw this as a good opportunity to have somebody actually like a spy watching her all the time, somebody who had a vested interest in her career, who was actually going to be around, quote-unquote, taking care of her. And I think she was very uncomfortable with that arrangement and sensed it right away. I don't think their marriage was a happy one ever, really. Although they may have been in love, I don't think they ever really had a very happy marriage.
Well, I don't know. I wasn't born yet. but I think
from the research that I've done, there seems to be very...
I know that she was really happy when she was pregnant.
Yeah,
she really
happy. Wanted children.
She wanted, and she also just wanted to be, a wife, because she really wasn't a wife with David Rose, because she didn't know how to do any of that. I mean, she had no training as just a person. She just knew how to be a movie star. So all of a sudden she was married, and then all of a sudden she was divorced, and so this time she really wanted to make it work, and she didn't have any training though as a wife or certainly in the real world, and she really wanted that. She didn't want to keep working.
I always felt so bad for these two actors, for Judy and Hugh Laurie. They're both walking along there, and all their scenes, everything that they did in the movie, they both are blue-eyed. And
Yes.
They had to wear these dark contact lenses, and they
Yes.
were in agony most of the time. I mean, they're just in so much pain.
This whole movie, everybody wore contact lenses.
They were wearing fake bodies, they were wearing fake eyes, they were wearing wigs. It was just constantly being things applied to people to make them look different from what they actually looked like. And for Hugh Laurie, this was really painful, as well as for Judy.
I remember being in the
contact
makeup
lenses
trailer.
were
Yeah.
killer.
I remember being in the makeup trailer with Hugh, and he said, "I'm putting hats in my eyes. I'm just putting hats in my eyes."
He was so miserable. He was just, his eyes tearing and tearing all the time. He was just so uncomfortable.
There was
so
one day we had
unhappy.
to stop
Yeah.
because he just couldn't take it
He
anymore.
couldn't take it anymore. And here in this scene was pretty late at night, and we were pretty worried about rain. It was almost going to rain, then it didn't rain, and it did rain.
Actually, it did.
It did rain.
It was actually
yeah.
misting through that.
It was
We just
misting
squeaked
through
through.
the whole thing. Yeah. And she threw away those pills, and she vowed that she was never going to take another pill again. And she had a child, Liza.
She did. She had my sister.
Yeah.
And, it was funny. When I remember the day that we shot the night, it went on forever. This whole scene.
This scene
went on
forever. Do you remember?
Forever.
This went on till like 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. We didn't get out of there.
Well, also, I mean,
that poor little girl was
I know.
playing Liza. She could barely keep her head up.
Oh, I know. And what was really extraordinary was also about Judy was so, she didn't really want to tell. She wanted to tell a different story. Yes,
In this version of the movie, the story's been eliminated.
I know. But
Yeah.
that night that we were shooting, all of a sudden Judy didn't want to tell the story that was in the script, and so she rewrote this whole scene.
Well, she and Marcia Mason,
Right.
Marcia Mason, who's playing her mother, came up with a whole sort of comedy routine that didn't make it into the movie, but it was really very funny.
It was very, very funny, and just went on and on and on and on, and we were there forever. I mean, we were in that house for a very,
Well, it was a very complicated sequence because so many different parts of this room were used, and the lighting had to keep being readjusted, and this poor little girl.
I know, and she was so adorable and sweet little girl. And this again, shows again how Louis B. Mayer once again would, make her do things which she didn't really want to do.
Oh, she loved singing.
She loved singing.
She always sang at every party. She loved to sing at
She
parties.
did love to
She
sing.
loved singing at parties.
She did love to sing at parties.
But this is interesting because there was obviously no track of your mother singing
Oh, the
any
voice.
song. So
yes,
we had it.
the voice alikes.
We originally did it with Judy Davis singing, and she sounded great, but much too bluesy to be Judy Garland. So we had this search for voice alikes.
And including
people
me.
who could sound like.
Yes, and including I laid down a track to
Yeah.
even sound like her at this point. I mean, to find the sound alike for this scene was quite amazing, and but plus the fact we had to also match Judy Davis's mouth.
Yeah, which we didn't quite do. We almost did. We almost did it because it was done so after the fact, and the girl who did it was in a studio somewhere just listening to everything over the phone and trying to do it over the phone.
Right.
She didn't even have the track in front of her.
Right.
James, this is great. I love what you did here
Yes.
because James and I talked about what we were trying to do, if you don't mind me saying
No, go
that,
ahead.
was try to sort of move through the history of film through this film so that the 20s look like the 20s, the 30s look like the 30s, the 40s look like the 40s, but everything sort of cheating up, going up faster and faster. And
Well, here
so
we're
that when
we're
you-
in the 40s here,
Yeah,
in the film noir era. So-
but trying to make it look a little like 50s, like Douglas Sirk,
Yeah.
which I think you did so beautifully. I mean, it's so well done. Because by the time we got to the 60s, we wanted to be sort of in the 90s with handheld cameras and.
well, a bit of the 60s too, which
Yeah.
we'll get to with Carnegie Hall,
But this is, I love the lighting here. I love what you did. It's very much like those 50s movies.
Yeah, I lit this, very sensual and soft and low key, but also slightly cool.
Yeah, but there's that use of color that's not very natural. I mean, you look at them and you say, why are they green? What is that green light? But I think it's so perfect. It's really powerful. And
I think what happens next too, I think is a critical turning point here because of when she goes
into the
takes the pills.
Made her look just so luminous.
Yeah.
In this
You know
scene.
what was extraordinary? There was on the monitor, there was a little picture of your mom, a profile shot of her holding, maybe it was you, I don't remember, or Eliza. And when we were filming this scene, I kept pointing to the picture and showing everybody who was looking at the monitor how much she actually looked so much like the photograph. It was extraordinary. Really, really amazing.
And it's also a wonderful testament to, our Emmy Award-winning hairdresser and makeup and costumes, because these wigs are magnificent. They really are beautiful.
None of the hair is real.
No.
It's all wigs.
But it's
And-
all human.
It's it's real
Yes,
hair.
and
but
Donna, they
it's-
were done in Italy.
They were done by Roccati in Italy. Did all of her wigs.
Now look at this beautiful
11 different
shot.
wigs for Judy Davis alone.
How many?
11 for Judy Davis
Right.
alone.
I always felt this was an very important moment in the story.
Yeah, because it's sort of the transition. I think what's so powerful about it in the way that it's designed is that it goes from this very elegant Hollywood setting and the movie stardom to back to these pills, and it's all done in this kind of very glamorous light.
And we were very lucky to find that door and, the way that house, looked.
Yeah, it was a kind of a deco design,
Yeah.
streamlined modern.
Yeah, in Toronto. So we were very, very lucky to find that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful place, which I later saw in X-Files or X-Men. They
Oh,
use
really?
the same house. Yeah, the exterior is an X-Men. This is the filming of The Pirate when things were really bad. This was a really low point for your mom and for their marriage.
Yes.
They were really having serious troubles. She had really...
And I always thought it was so funny because I always thought when I looked at that, I thought, oh, that wig, is it too long? And then I looked at the actual photographs and it was exactly the same. It was exactly the same wig, the same cost, everything.
It's really a kind of nutty movie in terms of the way people looked. Huh,
Yes.
Donna?
Yeah, totally.
The costumes in The Pirate are kind of really nuts.
Aren't they
Yeah.
way over the top?
What we would call over the top.
Yeah, we
know?
chose to put her in this outfit for this scene because we thought some of the others were going to be too ludicrous.
Well, this was the simplest so that you could still have the impact of this kind of a scene, because the other ones were very, they're all romantic and Biedermeier and really.
And this
And
was
this is true. I mean, she was actually sewing her pills into the costumes.
yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, she was sewing pills into the hems. She was sewing pills into the ruffles.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
very, very sad. But Jim, this must have been a challenge for you because that room was really tiny.
This room was 8 feet long by 5 feet wide or something.
And we used it
And
so
that
many
shot
times.
was so great. That one shot over, that overhead shot was so wonderful.
This house, this Minnelli house, is seen in X-Men and in lots of other movies. When you see this wide shot of her running to Liza, you see the front of the house, or the back of the house rather, and you see that house in lots of other movies.
But it also did look very, very Hollywood, which was really good.
Yeah.
That we got out of the interiors.
Well, also, he did such a phenomenal job, Dan Davis.
Yeah, he brought a ton of banana plants in there.
Yes,
All
he
those
did.
banana plants and palm trees and palms everywhere. Yeah, just extraordinary.
And no one really lives in this house. This isn't someone's private home. It's sort of like a museum.
It's a museum.
It's a museum in Toronto. So.
But all of that foliage is ours.
Right.
That was all added to make it look like Hollywood.
And it did.
Yeah,
it really did.
did.
It did look like all of those houses that you would see in Holmby Hills or Beverly Hills at the time.
But this was a real low point for your mom. She was hospitalized voluntarily after the movie was finished. I think it may have been right after she did The Pirate. She really wanted to kick drugs, and she really wanted to get herself together. And she went to this hospital in Massachusetts. We had to call it the Bingham Memorial Hospital. And she
Right.
spent 3 months there. And she really got herself pretty healthy.
Yes, she did. She got herself very, very healthy, and she didn't have to work, and she just exhausted.
And she put on weight.
Yeah, and she looked really, really well when she came home, and because she was trying so desperately, not only for herself but for my sister. She was trying so desperately to just, get healthy and be well and all of that.
But
and
she
again,
had-
the studios were calling her.
She had this constant habit, apparently. Because she went into psychotherapy more than once. And she would just flirt with the therapist. She would lie to the therapist.
Oh, yes,
she would tell them all sorts
outrageous
of
stories.
So because this was the only scene that had a therapist in it, for some reason, when we got to the set, I said to Judy Davis, I said, I see this about legs. There's something about her legs and about her flirting with this guy. And I think she does it really, really well, because she never gets serious with him. And so the therapy, if it was ever going to take, it never really did. Although she was in much better shape. And then she came home and they wanted her to do Annie Get Your Gun, which they had bought for her.
Right.
And stuck her right into this movie, which meant that she had to lose all this weight again. And so she got back on the pills and the whole thing started again. And she said, she herself said, I've fallen into the trap. I'm trapped again.
Well, it's also there was no. We have to remember the times there was no one who knew about the disease of addiction, so they just had to lose the weight and all of that, and so back again. Unfortunately, that would happen, and again with that.
And they made Busby
Busby
Berkeley her
Berkeley.
director. Could you believe that? After all those horrible things, they put Busby Berkeley back on the movie. And at this point, her hair was falling out. She was
So not well.
so sick. And they had advised MGM to give her at least a year off. And they didn't give her any time
No,
off.
they wouldn't.
Stuck her right back into this movie.
They really did. They just didn't care.
We didn't exaggerate her look, as I saw the test stills, and they match.
Yeah. When we would
Really-
look
she
at
really
the
looked
photographs and we looked at the things that we were shooting, it was almost identical, absolutely identical. And then, for the first time ever, she was suspended. She was
Right.
thrown off of the movie Annie Get Your Gun, and she was put on suspension
And she was so
replaced by
unhappy.
Betty Hutton.
Right.
Well, she
was
was
just-
really unhappy.
She was so unhappy, and a lot of people have seen the costume tests that come out from Annie Get Your Gun, and she's just really not a happy camper. When
Well,
you
I
see
think, Donna, you got that so so perfectly.
Yes.
She looked so much like her. We kept looking at the photographs and looking at what you had done, and we were all like totally freaked out.
Yeah.
She looked so much like her.
Yeah.
And then she did. This is all true. I mean, this scene is pretty much the way it's always been reported. She went into the house. She said, "I'll think of something." She went in the house, and the next thing they knew, she had gone into the bathroom, broken a glass, and slit her throat. There's also some speculation that she's the one who called the press, and she's the one who told the press what had happened, because she was very concerned that the sympathy be for her and not for the studios. Not for
There's so many,
MGM. I don't know what is the truth.
Neither do I. I don't know
So-
what the true story is, except for this is a person that was so desperately in need of help, and she was just crying out for help, and attention, and just she was by this time she didn't know really what to do and how to get a break, and I would imagine that when you get to the end of your rope like that, this is the only way that you can get attention.
And imagine after all the successes and all of the movies that she had made to be tossed out that way.
Exactly.
And having no concern. I said, at one point, Roger says, or Arthur says, Louis B. Mayer takes better care of his racehorses
Yeah,
than he
he
does
just said
her.
that.
This was a huge star.
And
Yeah.
it wasn't a
It was
bad
really a
cut
small
either.
wound,
Very
yeah.
small. She didn't want to kill
She
herself.
didn't want to die.
There's a little something to help you sleep.
Oh, better make it a double.
Miss Garland, please tell us, is this the end of the yellow...
This is the last time in the movie that you actually see her mother, although that was not the last time
No.
they actually saw each other. They did have a point where they stopped speaking to each other, and her mother tried desperately to get back in her life.
Is she gonna make it? Is she gonna make it? Throw us a bone here. Why are you so upset? Is it because...
All I had to do was click my heels.
This isn't exactly what happened. According to us, Annie Get Your Gun was the end of her career at MGM, but it wasn't really. She came back to MGM, and she did summer stock.
Click them as much as you want to. But there's no going home.
The public may have sympathized with Mama, but the studio didn't. On September 29, 1950, MGM officially terminated Judy Garland. She was finally free, and it scared her to death. The studio wasn't her only parting, though she and Vincent remained legally married for another year. Both knew the marriage was...
I love your lighting in this scene. I
Oh.
think it's so beautiful, and
And
it
I
really
will-
does propel you into a different era.
Well, one thing I did, I have a book of jazz photography. So I was looking at clubs like Birdland and places like that that existed in the late 40s, early 50s.
And this was so funny because this was a restaurant that we had gone and we had, secured for this location. And the owner of this restaurant decided that he wanted to open up the other part of the restaurant to the public.
Right.
And all of a sudden, strange people were walking into this restaurant. They were sitting down. They were ordering things.
They were blocking
and-
lights. I
They
mean,
were
and
blocking
They were
lights.
Oh,
They
it
were all
was-
over the place.
They were everywhere, and I will never forget. It was smoky, and it was so hot in this location that I thought Judy Davis was going to lose it. I really did. All of us were.
well, there was a thunderstorm pouring outside, so it was extremely humid and
Oh,
hot
it was
inside.
awful.
Yeah.
It was really awful, and her contacts were really hurting her.
In the smoke.
And the smoke and strange people kept coming in and sitting down, trying to have dinner in this location.
This-
Interesting entrance for Sid Luft. though.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's a great entrance for Sid Luft, Victor Garber, who's so wonderful. I've known Victor for years and worked with him a lot, but I've never seen him do anything like this. I think he's great.
And your lighting, Jim, is just wonderful.
I love what you've done in this. It's,
Just wonderful, because everybody looks so glamorous.
but it, like I say, it just propels you into a whole other place and a whole other era. You know you're in New York. You know you're not in L.A. anymore. Somehow it just...
I think, you have to really study the period. It's what Donna did with her costumes. I really had to pay attention to how movies looked in that era and how we remember, from looking at photography. And a lot of contemporary lighting is, I think the influence of music videos and so forth. It can be very crude and rough, dramatic, but my challenge throughout the film was to stay true to the period that I was in.
Yeah.
As we see later in the 60s, we changed that, and it became like the 60s.
Yeah.
But to shoot the film as if it were a film shot in the year 2000 would have been...
But the thing that I always say, we're not sitting here to congratulate ourselves, but I would say the thing that's so amazing to me is that was the idea from the very beginning. And you always have these ideas, and you tell people what you want to see, but you don't always see it. And you actually did make it happen. So I was always really grateful for that. Because it was always the idea was sort of to move through the history of film, through this film.
Also, I referenced still photography. I remember seeing pictures of like Joe DiMaggio around 1950 in a restaurant someplace, and that's the kind of feeling I'm old enough to remember places like this in Kansas City and Chicago and New York when I was a kid.
This diner scene, I remember when we were doing this, I kept looking at Judy Davis and I couldn't believe it. My mouth was hanging open. Everybody was...
This was very early in the film.
She looked so much like her. What's interesting to me, I don't know why this is, but on set, when she would come onto the set in her makeup, she looked exactly like Judy Garland.
Well, look at her.
On film, she looks a lot like her, but in person, she looked exactly like her.
And going into Judy's trailer, Judy Davis's trailer, with all of my mom's pictures, every single solitary place. So, she had also studied her so brilliantly, and she really studied. The one thing that always freaked me out about what Judy Davis did was she had her overbite, and she spoke with her overbite. And she did that thing with her mouth. That was just extraordinary.
Well, one of the things when we first met, Judy and I first met, and we talked about how she should prepare the character, that was one of the things that I told her was, to my mind, essential, because that S sound is so much a part of your mother. Anybody who's a real fan of your mother, one of the things that really moves, I think, people about your mother is the way she said her S's. I have a theory about it, because I was a speech therapist, and I think she had a kind of lateral lisp, because if you see Pigskin Parade, she has this kind of lateral lisp when she sings. And the way you correct her lateral lisp is to get people to put the sides of their tongue up, which causes this other kind of sound.
But she also did have an overbite.
And I think that's what happened. I think she had speech therapy. I think they corrected her.
But how Judy
sound.
Davis got this was that's when I would sit on the set, that's when I would get the heebie-jeebies. I would truly get the heebie-jeebies watching Judy Davis and what she would do with her mouth. And it was just extraordinary, and it's just a great testament to her incredible ability as an actor.
Well, as James said and Donna said, that everybody was paying so much attention. Really, everybody wanted to get it right, which was extraordinary.
But that was throughout everything on this movie. We were all on the same page. That was what was really, really wonderful, because we knew what we were doing was so wonderful, yet so dangerous.
We were scared to death.
Terrified. All of us were terrified.
All of us were terrified. We all thought, this could go really bad.
We were walking into a minefield.
Yeah, Judy Garland, you're taking on Judy Garland. At one point, Craig Zaden said to me, we're doing the Holy Grail.
That's right.
It was like,
the set was probably the quietest, most focused set I've ever worked on. This went on for 3 months.
Yeah.
And it was so focused and concentrated.
It was extraordinary because all of the guys who were on the crew didn't know very much about Judy Garland to start with.
They didn't think much of it. I told them this is very important. And after a few days, it's actually after, later when Judy sings to the president. And then they started saying, oh, this is really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, they kept saying, we don't always watch the movies we work on, but we really want to watch this. But then they also became fascinated with Judy Garland. They really started to want to know everything about Judy Garland. And
they wanted to be in the movie, too.
Yeah,
they're all in it.
They are all in it.
Yep.
This, I think, is really interesting because what happened, just getting back to the movie here, what happened was she went on tour. She couldn't work in Hollywood anymore, so she started performing live again, and she went to London and she performed at the Palladium. And then she came and had enormous success and came back to America. Nobody would book her. They wouldn't put her in a theater. And Sid Luft, your dad, got the idea of putting her in the Palace because she had been such a big star in vaudeville, and the Palace was sort of the mecca of vaudeville.
But at that time, it was all broken down.
It was a broken down, derelict movie theater.
Vaudeville was basically dead.
Right.
Vaudeville had been dead for years, and he resurrected vaudeville.
He had the whole place redone.
But they did it. Some
Yeah.
of it they did that with their own hands because
Yes.
they didn't have a lot of money. And they went in and redid the whole place, and everybody thought it was a joke. They
Yep.
all predicted that the show would fold immediately. Cab drivers, everybody was just saying, you know, this is a joke. And she opened up at the Palace, and she ran there for like 19...
And opening night, there were 5,000 people in the streets,
Yeah.
and it was the biggest opening night.
How long did she actually play there? Do you remember? I don't recall offhand. But
I
it
wanna
was
say
much
many weeks.
longer.
It was 6
much
weeks.
longer. No, it was originally supposed to be 6, and it got extended. But
Yeah.
in any case, it was a huge success. I don't remember the exact statistics offhand. But
And it started her live career.
Forget. Save the big gesture for the end.
Yes, yes. Got it. Thank you.
My favorite, this is always when I see this part in the movie, this is when it was really eerie for me because, first of all, Donna's outfit was so right on. And when Judy Davis came onto the set that afternoon or that morning when we were shooting this, and she came onto that stage and my mom's voice came out of Judy Davis, how we all just started to
This
cry.
is one of my favorite
my
shots.
angle, this
Yeah.
angle,
I love
to
this.
me, this is the most convincing. When you see that angle, and we did a lot from that angle.
Oh, I love
'cause
that back angle.
That's
Yes.
the angle that to me always made the cheat, as it were, the
Yes.
most believable.
I should mention Jens Stirrup, who's the B operator. How my trusted B operator, I wanted him to do that shot. He got a lot of great things from over there in the wings.
It was always...
That's a great shot.
We got that one,
Yeah.
the foot shot.
But it's that angle that to me is the most convincing.
Well, this was the most dangerous part because this was also, I mean, so many people know what my mom looked like at that point, and this is where when you go to see some biopics, the minute they start performing, you don't
doesn't
buy
work.
it. But we really did an incredible job here.
Well, I think Judy did. What's
Yes.
so amazing about Judy Davis's performance, which may be overlooked, is that she actually makes you understand how great Judy Garland was. Because that's what's extraordinary. I mean, we can all put on a record or a CD and say, oh, wow, she was great. And then somebody tries to impersonate her or whatever.
And you run out of the room.
Well, you don't run out of the room, but you don't quite get it.
No.
You think, boy, I wish I could have seen Judy Garland. But when you see Judy Davis be Judy Garland, you feel like you've had the experience. You understand what made Judy Garland such a phenomenal performer.
Yeah, and
she
this-
gives that to you. And what's to me the biggest compliment of all is that I've spoken to people who have seen this movie and have fallen in love with Judy Garland as
Who
a
hadn't been
result of
before,
seeing,
yeah.
who weren't Judy Garland fans before. And when you
this-
think that you could fall in love with Judy Garland by watching two other actresses play her, that's pretty astounding. That's an amazing compliment to those actresses and especially to Judy Davis.
Absolutely. And what was also a great compliment to Judy Davis is how Judy Davis and I spoke on the phone for a long time about this very scene of Over the Rainbow, and she wanted to know exactly when she cried, why she cried, and all of the things. She paid so much attention to not only the detail, because we had really no footage of my mom at the Palace Theater. So Judy Davis really didn't have too much
But
to
we
go
did have- we
from.
did.
But we
No.
did. We had footage of another performance after it.
Well, we had, right after she did the Palace,
Right.
she did this television special, and she did exactly this. So
Exactly.
we had that as a guide.
As a guide, but not her at the Palace.
No.
And this was to me, the most extraordinary performance that I've ever seen an actor do. And she was just mind-boggling because she literally did this from her soul. And you could tell how much Judy Davis really adored my mother.
She adored her. She told me it's the first character I've ever played that I've absolutely fallen in love with. She was in love with her.
And you know what was amazing? Remember when we were shooting this? If you had opened up those doors, water would have come out. Everybody was sobbing so hard.
Yes,
well,
it was
the
amazing.
whole crew, everybody, when she came and started to do this, it was just extraordinary. It was an extraordinary night that we shot this.
And it was a brilliant idea on the part of Roger. I think it was Roger Eden's. I'm not quite sure whose idea it was, that she closed her palace act by sitting down and singing acoustically on the floor of the stage
This
over
is
the
a
rainbow.
cappella, right?
Yes.
It wasn't a cappella, but
Roses.
it was acoustic. She had no microphone, no vocal assistance. There was an orchestra playing, but she did this. I've seen Barbara Cook do it. I've seen other singers do it in big concert halls.
Yes.
But she's the first one that I know of
She was
who
the first one
actually
to
did it.
sit on a stage with her, feet hanging over the orchestra pit. And
She
at
later
times-
made fun of it. She later was so embarrassed by it. She said, I can't believe I did that. She said, what a ham. She said, sitting there with that dirt on my face and tears running down my cheeks, because apparently she knew exactly what she was doing.
Absolutely.
And she said, she was really embarrassed by her own theatricality and how she milked the audience.
Something interesting you told me, Bob, when we were prepping, is that at the end of this film, you want the audience to feel like they've lived in Judy Garland's skin, and it's amazing that all the elements came together. Judy's performance and everything we've done behind the scenes.
Yeah.
That you really feel it's not just a performance you're looking at from the outside. You're feeling
Well, that
the
was
inside of this.
that was sort of my what I was going for was trying to make you, as the film progressed, you're watching it, and then without even being aware of it, you're becoming her. By the end of the movie, you are in her skin. You are actually in her skin.
And
I
you
think
understand her, and you really love her.
Well, for that reason,
Yes.
so that you can absolutely understand her. I felt that it was very important in making a movie like this that we had to answer the basic question of why do
Why
things
what
like,
happened?
why do things like this happen, and not just exploit it or sensationalize it, but to try to really understand it.
Oh, teach me something.
Hail Mary, full of
Hail
grace.
Mary, full of grace. Oh, Lordy, will my baby be okay?
Your baby's gonna be fine.
We had a neighbor once, the baby and the mother both died in childbirth.
Judy, you're not gonna die, and neither is your baby. Let's not go.
Oh, where the hell is that left?
He's in the waiting room.
Liza, do you want to hold your sister?
There I am. I'm born.
There are more bed shots in this movie that have ever been in any movie
She spent
ever.
half her time in bed, half in the makeup
There are
room.
like 56 scenes that take place in bed, and you don't really notice it so much.
I'd like to know
that
one
was,
thing.
That was the hardest
Do you know
thing.
that's the same bed?
I'd like to know one thing, Bob. Why am I so big?
Yeah, I wondered
I was a
that
large.
too.
I look like I've already been dating.
I wondered about that too, Lorna. What was the problem with you? Were you
I was a
very
large baby.
Yeah, I remember when the extras casting people came in with that baby, and we all sort of went, ah. She's not supposed to be 8 years old yet. She's just born.
There I am.
There you are.
Yep. And I love, Donna, that you put Judy Davis all in Mama's, those Chinese jackets and all of that, because she did wear all of that. It was so brilliant that you found all. Did you find that or make that?
We made all that, but as Bob said, with all those bed scenes, it's like nightgown, pajamas, nightgown, Chinese cotton.
Bathrobe.
Men's pajamas, women's pajamas, nightgown, bathrobe. No, it was very funny that way.
It was really.
One thing, just getting more serious, I liked how the film gets very, very serious, this problem of pregnancy, and then this beautiful loving moment, really genuinely loving, and then back. There's the swings, the peaks and valleys.
And it's true. I mean, if you scripted it, you would say, "Oh, come on! She just had a baby. Now her mother's going to die." It's like, oh,
And that's what
please.
really happened.
But it's what really happened. That's why I put in that 6 weeks later, so that people could realize how these things were just impacting her, just coming on in her life so quickly, so rapidly, just as she's about to or has begun making Star is Born. She has this baby. Her mother dies. There's just so much going on in her life.
And she's going through postpartum.
And she's going through postpartum depression. Exactly. Yeah, I mean, these things, if you were to script them, they would seem, wait a minute, you can't have her give birth in one scene and her mother dies in the next scene. Come on. But that's what happened.
Yeah, it really, really did.
And it also made a great transition into The Man That Got Away.
Yes, which was extraordinary because this really, I mean, Jim, the way you did this was just, and Donna.
Donna,
this was
Jim.
extraordinary. And Pamela and Marie-Ange, it was extraordinary.
And Judy Davis.
Yes.
And Judy. There's no cut here either.
And Bob Garrett. What about what Bob Garrett did?
Yeah.
He's the guy who taught them how to sing. I mean, get the lip sync so amazingly perfect.
Yeah, but
so accurate.
Tell about what Judy Davis.
The biggest problem we had in this scene was, you see the bowl on the piano? We looked at the movie. Do you remember?
Yeah.
James, we looked at the movie over and over and over again, trying to figure out what the hell is in that bowl. There's a bowl sitting on the piano.
Tips.
Tommy Noonan is sitting there chewing gum. She's singing away, and there's this bowl on the piano, and none of us could figure out what was in the bowl. So I don't know what we ultimately put in there. Some kind of nuts or something.
Peanuts.
That's how crazy we got. We got so obsessed with being exactly accurate.
Don't know what happened. It's all a crazy game.
This original film was CinemaScope. They started in Technicolor, shut down, started again in CinemaScope.
And how
widescreen.
many dresses did she actually wear in the film, Donna? Because she changed. The costumes in the real Star is Born changed, and then finally got to the blue one.
In our actual movie?
No, in the real
life.
one.
Four.
Four. This was the fourth one.
This was the fourth one, so
Yeah.
you had to truly look through all of that, right?
The different looks. Yeah, and we had to adjust. I mean, it's like, blue does as James can say, blue can do an incredibly different thing in different lights. So we had to get a balance of the blue and the... Also, we're dealing with iconography. I think that's what all of us were so overwhelmed with, and also we're so sacred too.
Yeah.
And here's a great thing. We decided to make this a broken take. So she misses her mark. We actually intentionally ran it out of focus.
Right.
Which actually happens
in the film.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when the idea came for it to go out of focus because she misses her mark, I didn't realize that it actually does go out of focus if you look at the real movie.
That's where I got the idea for this take, because I noticed she's missing the marks,
Yeah.
and that's what ended up in the film, regardless.
Yeah.
Yeah, because...
And a lot of this stuff, like those 4 takes of her in all the different dresses, a lot of that stuff now is available. You can actually get it on DVDs, and there are, I think there's, I forget what DVD, maybe this A Star is Born, where on the DVD, they show all 4 of those takes. But we didn't have access to a lot of that stuff. We got it all from
There's a restored version of the film, but
there was a guy in New York named John Fricke, whose name I think should enter this conversation.
Absolutely.
Because he provided us with so much of the background information that we needed to make this movie, and photographs.
The stills.
So much. I mean,
he was amazing.
Everything.
Amazing. We couldn't have done this movie without John Fricke.
He gave me about 40 hours of tapes of Judy Garland, her whole life. She unfortunately, or fortunately for us, grew up in front of a camera. Her whole life was recorded, and from the time she was a little girl. And so we benefited from that. And John Fricke provided us with all that stuff.
Yeah. But also...
Do you remember what happened when we were doing this?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Someone's cell phone went off.
Someone's cell phone, in the most intense moment.
And Judy, I have to tell this because I was outside.
Yes.
there.
You
Judy
can tell
Davis, there was dead silence. Judy,
And it was about 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yes.
No, it wasn't. No, it was in the afternoon.
But it was a very intense thing. Everyone was talking, and just cell phone went off someplace on the stage, and Judy jumped up, came running out.
But she finished the take.
She finished the
She
take.
finished the
She
take.
came
She
running
did the
out,
whole thing. She never
and
cut.
Everyone was frozen in fright.
But she screamed. Whose cell phone was that?
And she came running out. She turned around. No one would admit. She said, coward.
And then she broke up. Then she really laughed.
Yeah, everybody laughed. It turned out it was, I'll tattle, it was the construction people asleep in the next set.
Really?
And they ran away.
Really?
But Jim, the way that this looked was really
Well, we try to make this look
extraordinary.
like, now his name is out of my head. Who is the painter? That great
Hopper.
Hopper. I was going to say Hockney.
Hopper did all these hotel
yeah,
rooms.
we were
lonely
trying to
motel
do-
rooms, hotel rooms.
The whole idea behind this was to make it look like Hopper paintings.
So we did a thing there, we pulled away. Usually you push in on an embrace, and there we pulled away.
Yeah.
This was brutal to shoot. It was really, really painful to shoot this. The performances here. You know.
Well, I asked Judy Davis afterwards, I said, wow, that was so incredible. She said, I've done that before. She said, I did that in college.
But you know, it was interesting. She called me one night, and I introduced her to a doctor who is a friend of mine who deals with chemical dependency, and he talked her through exactly how you go through a withdrawal and what happens. And so that's how intently she wanted to get everything right.
Well, she had also done that other movie, the William Burroughs. What is that movie about?
Naked Lunch.
Naked Lunch.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so she played a drug addict before.
But she wanted to know the
Yeah,
difference.
she always wanted to know everything.
Everything. She wanted to know everything.
Yeah.
Getting the peaks and valleys. I mean, there's just such extremes, and then so beautiful and loving moments in the next moment.
And then her humor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the humor. Yeah.
But also Judy and I found what we try to get in this was, for her it was like normal. You know, she goes through this horrible experience, wakes up and says, hey, can I have a steak?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, putting the people around her through real hell. I mean, Sid Luft and her kids. And
But
you,
it also,
you know,
I also thought
that
it showed
she-
how much they cared about each other.
Yeah, but also the fact that, there's so much suffering going on around her, and she's sort of, moving right through it.
This was extraordinary. This was so extraordinary because this made me gasp how much Judy Davis really did look like my mom in this scene during A Star Is Born.
And she really didn't want to do this scene. She really
didn't,
She's-
did she?
No, because she said to me, you're not asking me anymore to play Judy Garland. You're asking me to play Vicki Lester or Esther Blodgett. And she said, not only am I playing Esther Blodgett, I'm playing Judy Garland playing Esther Blodgett. And she said, Judy Garland is brilliant in this scene, and I don't want to do it. And we fought about it quite a bit. I mean, it went back and forth quite a bit, and I kept saying, it's such an important moment. It's such an important moment. And she said, I don't want to do it. And right up until the last minute, she called me the night before, and she said, Bob, please, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. Finally, I said to her, you know what, Judy? You don't have to do it. We'll figure out another way to do it. She said, I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do it.
She's pretty damn brilliant.
Yeah.
And then she just was brilliant, and she was just fantastic.
But again, she did it like it wasn't the take they used in the movie.
I added that line. I promised her I would. I said, I'll have him say, we're not going to use that one. And this was amazing, James.
This
Yeah,
was
this is our black and white.
extraordinary.
This is,
Now, there's
there's 20
that's
people.
us,
We
yeah.
had 20 people to do this scene with. We had 20
We
extras.
scratched
right.
up
Look
the
at that.
film and everything.
But we only had 20 people. And
There's
you, Lorna.
There
There's
I
you.
am. There's my cameo in the movie.
Now this guy's doing Georgie Jessel here.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, but this was done on a soundstage.
on a soundstage with 20 extras.
That's
And
right.
Look at it.
To make it look like thousands upon thousands. And Donna, the work you did on this dress and the hat was just extraordinary.
It's such a beautiful dress.
I also have to say that John David Ridge, who made Judy Davis's clothing, was exquisite. He was in there, beat by beat, by breath, making sure that every bead, every, moment. And we were trying to duplicate things that don't exist now anymore.
Should credit Michael Johnson, our first AD.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because he organized these ridiculously little small crowds into huge, gigantic
crowds.
And his cameo, by the way, he's holding Toto in The Wizard of Oz. That's,
Yes.
that's Michael
Yeah,
Johnson.
that's
Thank you.
Michael Johnson, who was fantastic.
And black and white, real black and white is real black and white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it
Fake
was
that.
great. It was also great the way that you integrated all of the stock footage into the black and white of our footage. It was great how you did that, Bob.
Yeah, well, we made those decisions really, really early on. And in early prep, I had reels and reels of
Yeah, I was
stock
gonna say.
footage.
There were 35 hours
of stock footage.
stock footage, newsreels and whatnot.
We chose
Ay, ay, ay.
exactly, because also we had to pay for it. So I had to know, well, we're using exactly this much because we had to buy it. This was a sad thing, though. The movie opened, Star is Born opened, it was such a
Rave
big
reviews.
hit, rave reviews, lines around the block. I remember I was a kid, and I remember driving by. It was playing in two theaters next to each other on Broadway, the Victoria and the Astor, both theaters. And this huge billboard of Judy Garland with her hands up, around her face, framing her face, and lines around the block. I remember. I was just a little kid, but I remember it. And then the studio, because they were angry at Sid Luft and your mom for going over,
And they thought it was long.
and they
thought it was long.
and they wanted to make their money back quick.
And they
also there was a
wanted more
feud
showings
between the
of it.
Warner brothers,
Right.
Jack Warner and the brother in New York, who didn't get along too well. They sort of punished them all and cut the movie by about 25 minutes
Right.
and totally arbitrarily. They didn't go to George Cukor.
Oh, no.
And they didn't go to Morse Hart, who wrote it, even though Cukor and Hart had offered to make the cuts themselves. They went ahead and made these cuts.
And they butchered it.
Well, the critics went back and re-reviewed it and said they've ruined the movie, and nobody went.
They got panned.
Yeah,
Yep.
this
'Cause it
movie
didn't
that
make
had gotten
sense.
these brilliant reviews was then panned and became a flop, a box office flop. But she was nominated for an Oscar for it anyway. And
This was
everybody
her
was sure she was going to win. She was pregnant.
She had won an Oscar for The Wizard of Oz, but it was a juvenile Oscar
Right.
that I have in a bank vault. That I do have her Oscar, but she had never won, the big one.
Right.
And this was her second nomination.
And everybody was sure she was going to win. And this is another thing that if you scripted in a movie, nobody would believe you. That the night before the Academy Awards, she gives birth. It's
Yes.
prematurely. It's such a cornball thing. You'd think, oh, come on, please.
And nobody would have
The
believed.
timing of this is
Right.
just absolutely ridiculous. You can't put this in